Welcome back, family. Yes, the allegations are true. I'll go ahead and address it. The boy's dropping a podcast. It's been high time for it. I've been teasing it for a while. I've been wanting to do it for a while, and we're finally here, and I'm super excited about it. This was kind of born, honestly, out of me just being a bit burnt out. I haven't uploaded consistently at all in a while, and I've kind of uploaded different types of videos, just trying to remain creative and remain just kind of in the lane of all that stuff without continuing to burn myself out. And I have found lately, like, where I'm most active is my Instagram story. And it's funny, some people like it, some people hate it. I'm just constantly uploading long walls of text, just talking about my opinions on things, camera releases, stuff like that. It's been kind of like a digital diary for me. And I have really seen lately that I'm just like missing the bag, and I'm missing the opportunity. I'm missing everything else with a podcast, because what better way for a white man pushing 30 to get his thoughts out and ramble? Moving on, this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and keeping in line with my brand as well. Like, I want to kind of be just super authentic. My whole brand, Eli Creative Group, my freelancing company and all that, is really, I'm trying to make it really centered around being human, being authentic, being somebody that people want to be around, being somebody that people can call a friend. And we all know, if you're into client work, if you're, into freelancing and stuff, it's all about relationships. It's all about who you know. It's all about how you treat those people. And it's just a very, what's the word? It's like a word for a situation where you both feed off of each other positively. I'll overlay the word right here, drawing a big fat blank right now, but you get the gist. And I'm just getting to the point where, if I want to talk about things, if I want to just be real for a minute, podcast is the best way to do it. And I don't really know what the full format of this is going to look like yet. So the name of the podcast, as you've seen already, is called The Eli Effect. Yes, my last name is pronounced Eli, for those that don't know. The A is silent. It's Italian, but we Americanized it up. You know how it goes. But I want it to be called The Eli Effect because I want people to listen to this and kind of get something from it. I want people to take what I've got to say or my thoughts and be able to ruminate on them and be able to apply any kind of knowledge I drop or lessons I can help teach into their own lives. And I just want it to be kind of like an effect, a domino effect, butterfly effect, in this case, the Eli effect. So kind of stewed on that name for a while. It's a little bit corny, but we're going to lean into it. I think it's pretty cool, if I'm saying so myself. I went through several different name options, and this is kind of where I landed. And yeah, so we're on episode 1. Forgive me if there's any jitters, if there's any issues with audio, lighting. Never podcasted before, especially on my own. So we're going to figure this out together, and we'll get rolling with episode 1. So for this opening episode, I kind of wanted to talk about my journey into freelance. I kind of want to bear it all. I want you guys to really see where I come from and how I got into this field. And I just want there to be like no assumptions or anything. I'll tell you this, just to drop some realness right off the bat. I think that and I'm guilty of this, I'm speaking from experience, but I think that sometimes on socials and wherever else, we see people that are in positions that we want to be in, and naturally we get like a little bit envious. We get a little bit kind of just jealous. We want to be where they are. And sometimes, especially if we don't quite click with that person, if we don't really love their content, it may form into a situation where we begin to kind of make our own assumptions. I'm not saying that's always the case, but definitely is sometimes. Like haters, for instance. Haters are all just people that are jealous. That it's simple as that. And if you find yourself being a hater, it's just a time to self-reflect. So I've had to do it plenty of times. And so I just kind of want you guys to know my story and how I got where I am. And especially if I'm going to be giving you camera advice on the internet, if I'm going to be giving you gear advice, career advice, human advice, whatever, I want you to know who I am, and I want you to know my background. So I'm not going to dive too into the nitty gritty with it. And forgive me if there's cuts and stuff throughout this. Again, still figuring out the format, still trying to figure out, how to just ramble to a camera instead of knowing and relying on the fact that I can chop it up and, make pretty aesthetic adjustments to it and all that. I want this to be just pretty raw. So I'll start in college, essentially. So I went to college at a technical school. And I had some credits that carried over from a high school that I went to because I took some college classes while in high school. And it was just a local technical college. I was a B, C student with an occasional A and an occasional D as well. And especially in my like middle school, early high school years, I've never been a good student. I've never tested well. I've never been good at studying. I've never just had like the brain and the demeanor for school. Like I always hated it. I always wanted to go home. I didn't really make a ton of my friends in high school. I was a late bloomer with a lot of that stuff. So when it came to college, didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I couldn't really get into anywhere that was, prestigious or anything like that to do anything crazy with my life. So I ended up going for graphic design because I was interested in that in high school. My high school had majors as well, and I was in digital communications in high school, and those credits transferred into the digital arts program at my local community college. So I did 2 years there, and to be honest, it's weird because I like to think things happen for a reason. I'm a big like kind of fate guy. I'm a full believer in God. I'm a full believer that He plans out our steps. He's got a plan for our lives, everything like that. So I believe everything happens for a reason, and that you're supposed to learn from it, grow from it. So I do think college was necessary for my story in the end. But when it comes to like just feeling like a waste of time, it really did. And I didn't learn a single thing in college. I had a couple of cool professors. I had a couple of people that I looked forward to seeing. I did make a couple of my good friends in college. So it wasn't completely for nothing, but looking back, especially in the earlier points of my journey, I was just like, man, I could have really spent those 2 years going hard with video, going hard with learning about things, this, that, and the other. It all could have happened differently, and at the end of the day, we have to stick with what our story is. And that's another reason why you can't compare yourself to people that are in other positions, because you didn't grow up with the same circumstances as them. You didn't hear the same lessons as them growing up in every case. So everything that we go through is molded by our own lens and perspective and life experience. So sorry to just drop another big truth bomb like that. But so in college, essentially, while it felt like a waste of time, I did kind of start to get more into video while in college. I've always been into video. I started as a photographer, for those that don't know. Followed my dad around at the ballpark while he did sports photography as a kid. Thought it was the coolest thing ever. And he got me my first camera early on, and things have never been the same. So while in college for graphic design, it was just something that I kind of felt like I had to do because I had already gone to high school for it and have gotten credits for it. Didn't really know what else I wanted to do with my life. I had only ever worked retail jobs and some design internships that I had to take for school. So I was very lost. And my second year of my college experience, I had a class, I think it was some kind of production class, and we very briefly skimmed over Adobe Premiere. We used the Adobe suite at the college. The assignment while kind of learning and skimming through that program was to film and edit a commercial for a local tourist attraction. College was close to and has campuses in Myrtle Beach, which is a big tourist area. So I chose Broadway at the beach, and I took my camera at the time. It was a Nikon D7100, and I took that to Broadway and filmed a commercial. I filmed time lapses. I just wandered around with my camera. Stuff I kind of already knew how to do, but just didn't intentionally go out and do before. It was always photography. So I discovered that I really, really liked it. And around the time I had shot, some, music videos, little just home video type things for friends as well. Again, just because I was the guy with the camera. So that was, it felt natural. It felt like an extension of what I was already doing. And that is kind of where I consider the birthplace. That's what made my college experience worth it. That's what makes me not bitter about the fact that I went to college, because I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not a college supporter. If you're not going into medical, law, whatever else, don't go to college. Not necessary today. Learn a skill, build a business off of it. That's a conversation for another podcast. But anyway, from there, it was kind of, once I graduated, it was kind of just figuring out what I wanted to do with my life still, and working more retail jobs and stuff like that just to get on my feet while I figured things out. I was looking for design jobs, of course, because I had a degree, but it was a typical situation like many other situations where you get out of school and you've got experience, like you've got internships, you've got a degree under your belt now, but obviously the job wants an even bigger degree. They want 4 years of work experience for $40,000 a year, just Gen Z things, super cute. So from there, I got a job at a police department. I was doing 911 dispatching for 6 months. That's all I could hang. And worst job of my life, first of all, 911 dispatchers, I commend you, because it is not for the weak. And I was pretty decent at it. Like, it was a situation where they didn't want me to go. They had invested money into me. They, uniforms, training, all that. It was a full, like the 6 months, I had just gotten to where I was fully alone. And naturally, that's where I got the most overwhelmed. But worst job of my life. And that job was really kind of the start of me realizing that I need to do something with my life. Like, I need to figure out how to get money with my camera. I need to figure out what I need to be doing, all that stuff. It really got the gears turning. I was miserable. I freaking hated life every day. And it was just not a good experience, not mentally, not physically, nothing. So after 6 months doing dispatch, I basically said, screw it, I've got to get out of here. And I signed on with a sneaker store at the mall. And I was the assistant manager making $10 an hour. I was splitting rent with an ex at the time. So I was able to make ends meet. I didn't really have a ton of responsibility yet. And rent was cheap back then, I had a 2-bedroom apartment for $980. How does that sound, Gen Alpha? Never going to happen again. Very similar to dispatch, though. I absolutely hated the sneaker store. It was a lot more fun. It was a lot more lax for sure, and definitely didn't take as much of a toll on my health and all that. But it still was not what I wanted to do. I had done retail many years before, and I just didn't like it. And it wasn't even a pride thing. Like, I've always been a person that believes, I'm where I need to be right now. Of course, I get jealous, I get envious, and I want to be further, but I have been pretty good in my life about realizing that I'm where I'm supposed to be regardless of how I feel, and that things will happen if I keep praying for it, if I keep working toward it. So at the sneaker store was when I really started to go hard. Throughout college, throughout dispatch and the sneaker store, I had continued kind of doing little video projects after I got bitten by that bug. I created things for family and friends. I shot a lot more music videos for my good friend David. And, at that point, I had a tiny bit of a portfolio. I'd shot a couple of family and friends' weddings as well. So I had a little bit of a portfolio under my belt. And this was really before the video craze too. This was back in like 2017 to 2019. And really before video just blew up like it has. It was still big. It's been big for years now, but really before the tidal wave happened. While I was at the sneaker store, I literally searched Indeed and Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter every single day for video jobs in my area. That's another thing. That's another kind of bad part about living in a smaller town, in a smaller area, is the video market, the creative market just really isn't there. So every single day I would skim and I would look through. And sometime in 2018, I believe, I found a opening at this event company, and it was kind of in the next city over. It wasn't too far away. I think it was about a 45-minute commute from where I lived at the time. And it really sounded like a dream position when I read it. It was like looking for an editor. It was an editing position. So it was, and I had gotten pretty confident in my editing at the time, and I immediately applied. The description was super cool. It was like, video editor needed. We work live events around the country. Cool hotels, cool locations, and basically it said, we need you to be able to do a little bit of videography as well if needed. I saw the application and I immediately applied for it, and it was like months. I worked at the sneaker job for another 6 months, just like dispatch. I worked there for 6 months, and I applied for the video job like two or 3 months into the sneaker store job. And I think I didn't hear back from this event company until like 2 months later. And it was completely out of the blue. And it's a hilarious story because this is where my life just got thrown into the freaking like vortex. This is where things just started moving very quick for me. And it's where real change started to happen. So he gave me a call, owner of this company, and it did say it was a small company in the description. So he called me and says, hey, I like your portfolio. I like what you have to offer. Do you think for the interview process, you can come and shoot an event with us and work an event with us in Miami? Keep in mind, I had been on a plane one time in my life before this job. So I was not eager to do that. Felt like I was getting trafficked, to be honest with you. My mother was not on board with it. Everybody was telling me, my girlfriend at the time did not. She thought it was super weird too. And it's funny, like I knew it wasn't a scam, but I just wanted to protect myself. I didn't want to get burned. And at that, I had rent to pay. I had obligations at that point. So when it came to getting back to him, I was like, dude, I can't do that for obvious reasons. I mean, I was 21 at the time, so I still really knew nothing. Like I was still a kid, and I was like, I can't do this. Is there any other way? Can I get an interview in person? Can we at least talk? So I ended up meeting him at his office, and we really hit it off. I was there much longer than I was scheduled to be. It felt very natural. It felt comfortable. And I left feeling pretty confident and pretty good about things. And it's funny, kind of the next step in that process, one of the craziest curveballs I've ever been thrown in my life, he basically got back and said, hey, here is like a 10 gigabyte Google Drive folder of ski trip footage from my GoPro. And this was at the time of like the GoPro 4 or 5 and stuff like that. And he was like, edit this into like a 60-second sizzle reel. Something I had never done before, something I had never had experience with, never tried, wasn't even that familiar with. And it was funny. I took on the challenge. I was like, okay, I got this. And he sent me it was a Dropbox file. He sent me the Dropbox file, and I immediately combed through everything. And first thing I do naturally is find a banger to put behind it. Basically, I got it back to him, and he did say, he was like, I need it within 48 hours. So I was crapping my pants. I worked at the sneaker store full time at the time, and it was basically a couple of all-nighters to do this. I was not fast at the time. I was not efficient, and I had never done this before. So I tried my best to apply some of my music video knowledge and just create a cool looking video. So I did that, and I got it back to him. And another one of the craziest like job moments in my life, he basically messaged me back and said, hey, I like this. My wife, who is the co-owner of my company, likes another guy's video more. I'll give you 24 hours to make yours even better. And I was like, okay, challenge accepted again. So I went home, pulled another all-nighter, and he gave me some tips. He was like, make it a little more upbeat. He's like, I'd like to see more cuts on the beat. I'd like to see more of this, that. And so he guided me in the right direction. And I got him the video back in 24 hours. And basically, he gave me a call and gave me the offer. And I spent 2 years with that company. And just to get into some of my experience with that, I will tell you that this job is what turned me into who I am today. This job is the reason I have, a freelance business right now. I think I would have found my way otherwise. I think I was born with kind of an entrepreneur mind. I think that I was destined to be on a different path, but in this current timeline, this is what led to it for me. And this is where what I want a big learning point of this podcast to be, because I worked, so many insane long hours. These events, like, if you don't know, there's a whole world of corporate events. There's a whole world of like business events, and they're just like kind of like older people clubs almost. Like the ballrooms get jumping, they play music, like, and they're just teaching about their own niches, whatever. Some of them are about, getting people through your sales funnels. Some of them are about atrial fibrillation patients. I've worked them all across the board. Like there's so many different types of these events, and they all put their own spin. They all like typically make an offer, and they sell a coaching program to their audience at the end. And that's just kind of that world. And I got thrown headfirst into it when I don't even know where to start with this job, honestly. It's funny because it was a true trial by fire. And if I hadn't stuck it out, I would not have what I have today. I wouldn't be as fast as I am. I wouldn't be as efficient as I am. I wouldn't be as much of a human as I am. It's funny, me and the team that I was with at the time at that job, it was a moment in time. It was one of those jobs. I know you guys can relate in any field. If it's like a serving job, a retail job, you remember a certain crew in your life. And this was really that moment for me. This was really where I formed friendships and I formed real connections through just a grind. And it's funny, man, like when you're working these events, and these events are like 12 plus hour days most of the time, multiple days at a time. And I know to blue collar people, I know to whatever else I sound like a big fat P word right now. I get it. I understand it. But in my certain scenario, these events are tough. And especially for the higher ups, the project managers and stuff, they have it even way worse than I do. So we were all just figuring it out. It was my first real dose of like the grind, like obviously the sneaker store was a grind. Obviously dispatch was part of the grind looking back, but this is where the video grind began. And I would frequently work weekends. I would have like a month at a time with like 0 days off. I'd find out on Saturday morning that I needed to come in Saturday afternoon for a shoot. And it was like my job was on the line otherwise. It's like if I wanted to keep this job, if I wanted to build this up and into something, I just had to tough it out. And I think that, and I do not want to come off like a boomer, like a Gen Xer or whatever when I say this, but like I do think that a lot of times, and I say this so lovingly, like please understand that. I think that in these times, people just aren't willing to thug it out sometimes, man. Like how bad do you want it? You know, like how bad do you want to get to where you want to be? And I'm still taking this advice because it's funny. This boss that I worked for, she has a saying because she speaks on stage as well as a speaker. She has this saying called new level, new devil. It's like every new level you get to, there's a new dragon you're going to have to slay. There's a new beast you're going to have to take down. And that's really the case. So I'm still taking in all of this advice myself as well. You know, I'm working on myself as a human daily. So please don't think I'm coming off judgy or like, oh, suck it up. Like I'm not with that mentality either. So just please feel me on that. But I do think when it comes to getting things you want, whether it's losing weight, whether it's building a business, whether it's getting higher in your job, a lot of times the drive to do it and just the grit is not there, you know? And when it's not there, you just have to make it happen. There is no secret sauce. Like there is no, you know, I think if there was a secret sauce, people would say it's discipline, but that's not a secret sauce. That takes work, that takes time, that takes, you know, grit, and it takes just kind of a chest to get through sometimes and to make yourself do. To anybody that's wanting to get into freelance, to anybody that's wanting to, you know, do their own thing or whatever your goals are, just understand like you're going to have to eat it sometimes, and there's not going to be an immediate source of gratification. It's the age-old concept of delayed gratification. It's like you've got to be able to put off the prize and just know that it's coming, but no time soon a lot of the time. And you know, unless you're like a rare overnight sensation, for the rest of us normal people, it's a slow and steady grind. And every business conference that I've worked, every entrepreneurial event that I've worked says the same exact thing. I'm kind of like regurgitating a lot of that stuff that I've heard at these shows from the freaking millionaires and billionaires to you guys. Like, I understand that sometimes those people can say things that are out of touch. I understand that the older generations and stuff love to say, oh, if they just like to work, if they just like, it's like, no. But there is some truth to just gritting your teeth and getting through it when you have a certain goal that will only require that. You know, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to build your business for you. I won't harp on it any longer. But this job was the true grind for me. And the source of gratification came when my portfolio was absolutely stacked 2 years later. These events came with big names. I had huge names in my portfolio. I had footage of these crazy people at this point. I had built my skills up so much. You know, I went from taking a single flight before getting this job to like 20 plus flights my first year at this job. So I went all over the place. And while I was there, I was shooting stuff for fun too. I got drone footage of all these cities. I got all this cool stuff, and I just used it to continue to build up my infrastructure. And all the while I was saving money as well. So another big nugget I can give you, nobody just quits and jumps off the cliff with no cash. I used to think that ignorantly, you know, that may make me look more stupid, but in case anybody else is thinking, you know, how do I just quit my job with no, these people quit with savings a lot of the time. You do hear, you know, the ones that are speaking on stage a lot of the time, they do say, oh, I had $2 left in my bank account. Not saying they're frauds, but for the average person, you're going to want to have several months of funds saved up. Like if crap hits the fan, you're going to want to have about 6 or more months. I know that sounds brutal, you know, when it's hard to save right now, tough times, but you're going to want like 6 months of savings to build up and to kind of feel comfortable as you can in that situation. I know that the concept of getting uncomfortable is good. I know that we want to be uncomfortable in order to allow growth. If you're uncomfortable, it normally means you're growing. But when it comes to like necessities, bills and stuff, it's like if you don't want to be homeless, like you're going to have to figure some stuff out as far as finances. So that's a big nugget of wisdom as well. And all the while I was there, I was building up my savings. I was building my credit. That's going to be a separate podcast. I'm not even going to go down the credit rabbit hole right now. If you want to hear more about that, please comment, because I think credit is this hugely misunderstood thing. I think we all desperately need good credit. Whole other conversation. Sorry for getting derailed, but I was building my credit. I was building my relationships with other companies that I was at. While I was at these shows, several different companies would collaborate sometimes. There would be all sorts of freelancers. There would be, you know, big names in our industry there as well. And I would ask these people, I would constantly go up to them. I'd be like, hey, how do I get where you are? How do I do what you do in the least amount of time possible? Like I was asking these people everything. And it's funny because all over the spectrum, they gave me responses. They said some of them were immediately, oh, dude, you got to do this. Just and 9 times out of 10, it was build your connections, build your relationships, be a good person, build your skills, do it. I know there's a lot of courses and stuff for figuring out how to get clients and all that. And there are like nitty gritty micro tactics that you can do. But as far as like the macro of it, and as far as the kind of bird's eye view, it's relationships, it's being a good person, it's having good work, and it's just putting yourself out there, just like I'm doing with this freaking ridiculous podcast right now. So it's all about building your connections and your relationships. And that's what I did as well. I was asking these people, what do I do to get where you are? And a lot of them too, it discouraged me from it. They were like gatekeeping that whatever the case may be, they were like, no, there's no health benefits in it, kid. Stick where you're at. You're making a good cushy salary. It's like, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Why are you in this position? It's like, are you trying to, it a lot of times felt like they just weren't trying to see you win. And I'm very much I want to see you win kind of guy. Like I am very positive when it comes to other people's success. Now, while I still do get jealous sometimes, when somebody is where I want to be, I've got to correct that in my heart. And I've got to figure out, I'll be there when it's time for me to be there, if I'm even meant to be there. You know what I'm saying? So like, you've got to have those perspectives as well when you're dealing with people like that. But I'll tell you this, even the negative people, even the people that are not friendly, not, inviting when it comes to that stuff, take notes from them as well, because they're still successful in that moment. They're still working the same show as you. So they're there for a reason. And if nothing else, you're going to get what you shouldn't do out of that, which is a big lesson. You might talk to somebody like that and it might put a damper on your day. You might be like, oh, wish I'd never met that guy. But it's like, no, listen to what he says and understand that you don't want to be him. When the freelancer comes up to you one day, or when the freelance hopeful comes up to you one day and is like, hey, how do I get where you are? Take that opportunity to, what's it called? Kill the generational trauma, like start a new timeline of positivity and less ego. Ego is also a whole other podcast, huge bad thing in the industry. I dealt with a lot of that while on the road as well, trying to collect this information. But on top of dealing with the freelancers, I was listening to all the business people speak as well. And I was taking notes. I had notepads, when I wasn't working, anytime I had downtime, I was trying to learn from these people. And I had gathered what I've already told you. I needed to make connections, stuff that I'd already done. At that point, I had money saved up. At that point, it really was just about jumping off the cliff. It really was just about getting it done, because it was so scary. Even though I had several months of expenses saved up, even though I had a couple clients, kind of ready for me at that point, you'll never know till you're there. Like it's terrifying. It's genuinely terrifying. It's like I'm about to leave a job with benefits, a salary, a W-2. It's complete uncertainty. It's complete uncertainty, but that's where the growth happens. Like I've already said. So the growth comes in those times of nut up or shut up, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. So I left amicably, I left on good terms, and they ended up being my actual first client. I had a couple people that were interested in video work, but they were the first ones to immediately just start putting me back on shows. And if you go the route of trying to make your current employer your first freelance client, I would say don't be scared of it. I would say just be a good person. Like I said, like don't leave and burn the bridges behind you and kind of go out with a bang. They're a familiar source of income. They are a potential continuous source of income if you continue on the trajectory. At that point, I knew their branding. I had created so much social media content for them, and I just kind of was a good fit. I was friends with all their employees. I knew their culture. I was a part of their culture. So they were already eager to bring me back, and they still bring me back to this day. I just got done working with them. So they were my primary source of income for the first several months of my freelance journey. And like I had said, all the while I was making friends and connections at other companies that I was on site with at these events. So another one of the big kind of partner companies that worked with this one that I worked for noticed my skills as well, and they immediately started bringing me on. So those two big event clients really kind of paved my whole first year freelance. And it really wasn't until the kind of end of the first year, top of the second year, that I started to make things happen at the local level. And most of that, again, is a result of people approaching me. My freelance journey I've been very blessed to be able to do mostly like freelance work for agencies where they handle the sale, they find the job, and they bring it to me. As I get further in my freelance journey, I'm understanding the value of also being able to sell. And while I'm still figuring that out, I do not sell often. I do get the majority of my income from clients that contract me out for sales that they've already made. And I'm happy in that lane. I like it, but I know that it's not potentially forever. I know that it's not potentially the best way for me to make money. And I do at this point finally kind of getting decently into my third year freelance, have a couple of my own clients on monthly retainer now. But up until that, it was mostly agency work. It was mostly, and that just comes from, word of mouth referrals. One of the big frustrating things for me when it came to going on my own was referrals. So many people said, oh, I get most of my work word of mouth referrals. And that train did not start rolling for me until well into the second year. People would approach me sometimes, but it wouldn't be through word of mouth. They just saw my Instagram or something like that. But when it came to actual referrals, it's a big question I always have. Is like, dude, when are the referrals going to start? Like, I've been busting my butt. I've been working so hard. When are more people going to start hearing about this guy's video he got from me and come to me for one? And that kind of just recently started happening. So referrals will take a while to get going depending on where you live, depending on the need for videography and filmmaking services. So understand too that your market and your city is going to play a huge part in this. That's another reason I really lucked out. This city's not big for that stuff, but I've gotten in with a good network of people that are doing it. So I've got a good amount of work at the local level right now. I'd say it's about last year, actually, 2023, I did most of my work at the local level because a local agency approached me to start contracting me for some work, and it ended up just being a big year with them. So I've kept the event train rolling. I'm always going to keep the event train rolling, and I want to do stuff on the road. I want to still work with these big speakers. It's an addicting environment when you get around it. But other than that, I do have my first couple of kind of monthly retainer clients, and I've got other clients that I'm doing one-off work for regularly, just kind of repeat clients. So I've kind of built a nice, well-oiled machine at this point, and I'm getting better at reaching out to people. I'm getting better at making connections on my own without having like a middleman, like an agency or somebody speak for me. And I'm happy. Like, I was really reflecting on it, getting into freelance is the best thing I've ever done in my life. And how I got here at times, it feels like a fever dream at this point, but when I was in it, it was hard. I felt like I was eating crap every day. I felt like I was waiting on a miracle. I felt like I was lost. I felt like it would never happen for me. And look, I'm not big time. Like, I'm not super far down the road. I'm not some huge, crazy success story. I'm not a mogul, but at the same time, I pay my bills with my camera, and I live a cute little life in a cute little town. And I really haven't had to worry about money at all for the past 3 years. And it has been such a blessing to say that. Like, it's been such a blessing to feel that. It's been such a blessing to say yes to more opportunities with my family. And look, when you're working freelance, sometimes you're working double the hours that you're working full time. Like at my full-time job, even though I worked so hard there's been plenty of weeks and months in freelance where I've outworked that old version of myself. But I will say this, when it's for your own company, it doesn't feel the same. I can't describe it any better than that. People say, oh, you don't work a day in your life when you do what you love. Like, you do. You work your ass off, but it feels better. That's the biggest thing about freelance to me. And currently right now as well, being mostly my own guy. I'm not an agency. I don't really have a desire to become one. Who knows what's in my future, but I think that for me, it's going to be mainly a solo creator thing until I can either build that up to where I'm just a super specialist / artist that people come to and pay the big bucks, or until I just kind of, decide to form an agency of my own. I don't think I'll ever become a full-timer for another agency if I can help it. I really value being my own person. I really value being an entrepreneur. I like being on my own. And I think that's the beauty of freelance too, especially with video. Like, so many different avenues you can go. You can be a director. You can be more of a creative director. Like, you don't even have to touch a camera if you don't want to. Like, that will maybe take longer to build. All these avenues have varying grinds and times and stuff. But I think, you can be a camera guy. You can be an audio person. You can be like, in the world of just production, there's so many different routes you can go once you find out what you're really good at. And for me right now, it's camera work. So that's why I tend to be more of a solo guy. because I can step in and I can really master the camera. So I think too, if you're thinking about going freelance, understand the lane you want to be in, have a clear vision. Don't try to pull yourself in too many different directions. A lot of people will tell you that as well. Don't overexert yourself. Like, don't say yes to 5, 6 jobs in one week if you truly can't handle that. Like, I do think part of the beauty of freelance as well is that downtime, because there's plenty of times, like I said, where I'm working double the hours I worked at my old job, but there's plenty of weeks I do nothing, bro. Like, and I don't even feel bad saying that. That's the lifestyle I've built. Like, I work hard and I play hard. If you want to get into this general realm, I'll break it up to end things off. I know I've been rambling, but hopefully you're getting something out of this. I'm really sharing my heart with you guys right now. I just want to be real. I'll try to leave you with some of my best kind of condensed tips. If you're trying to get into freelance, number one, I would say mentally prepare for the grind. Like, understand that it's not overnight. Understand that it is a process, marathon, not a sprint type of deal. You'll be at this for a while and it will pay off. When you get there, it will all be worth it, and it'll all be worth it along the ride too, baby. We know it's about the journey. So prepare for the grind. 2, be a cool person. I've said this in so much of my content, but it's the number one thing I try to do with myself and my company, Eli Creative. Be somebody that people like, and don't fake that, but also just, if you've got to do some internal work, then do it. Like, this is a service industry. This is a people industry. You've got to be ready to interact and be cool, be a team player, be valuable. The name of the game in freelance is providing value. You'll hear it at any conference you go to. You'll hear it in any course you download and buy. You'll find it anywhere. Value is king. And that leads me to my third point, which is kill your ego. And when I say kill your ego, I say, and it goes hand in hand with all the other points, get rid of, I want to be the biggest and the best. Like, you can be. Like, you've got plenty of years to do that. And while you do that, you don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to step on people's toes. You don't have to, you don't have anything to prove, bro. Like, there's enough work out there for all of us. A client that says no to me may say yes to you because they like your outfit better. Like, it comes down to those things sometimes when you're, bidding for a job, or when you're competing with other freelancers. Sometimes, bro, it comes down to who has the cooler logo, who has the so do your own thing. Biggest thing with ego in the shows that I've worked and on sets that I've worked is just people kind of thinking, oh, that's not my job. That's not my, and there's people that just love to put dollar signs on everything. There's people that love to, be like, oh, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to make an invoice line item for it. And it's like, for certain things, yes, if it goes beyond a certain point. But for instance, this client I recently worked an event for, they asked over the headsets. They said, can anybody help tear down some tables in the main room? And there wasn't a lot of responses. People were busy. I had nothing to do. It was downtime. I didn't have anything to film. I threw the headset on and said, yeah, let's do it. Where I got to go? And I'm not saying that to freaking humble brag. I'm not saying that to be cringy or anything, but be that guy, step in, help where you can, be somebody that's a team player, be somebody that's cool and that does not just have a God complex, bro. It's not hard. Like, it's really not hard. And I would say the next one is to just always be a student, always be asking questions. Everybody, the good people, the bad people, the people you may not think you want to hear advice from, hear them out. Those types of people love to hear themselves talk. So great resource for information. You know what I'm talking about? So be a student, reach out to as many people as you possibly can and just hear about their experiences. Ask them vulnerable questions. Say, how do I get where you are? I want to drive a car like you do. I want to have the camera that you have. What steps did you take to get there? And 9 times out of 10, they'll be cool with at least giving you like a surface level view. And if you really hit it off someone and build a friendship, they'll dump it on you like I'm doing right now. Building off of that as well, my next point would be put yourself out there. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed. Nobody's thinking about the Instagram post you made. Nobody's thinking about the Instagram aesthetic that you have. Nobody cares that the pictures don't match. And if they do care, they're a sausage, bro. Like, do you want to be associated with that person that cares? Just stop worrying about what other people think. Put yourself out there. Share your work. I'm a big, big, big proponent of sharing your work. Put your stuff out there. Show people what you're doing. That's what's going to drum up those referrals and word of mouth. That's how people are going to see what you do. Make a profile on LinkedIn, Do all the things to just make sure you get in front of people, especially when you can't afford ads and stuff. I'm still not at the point where I'm doing ads. Like anytime a client drops a project, I'm sharing it on my Instagram story, like, oh, fresh work with so-and-so, pleasure to hang with y'all. And I'll comment on the stuff when they drop it. I'll be like, oh, I love you guys, like sappy stuff, but that's my brand. That's what I do. They know me for that and they love me for that. And that's why they keep hiring me. So put yourself out there. And then finally, I would just say, I want to speak on fear. You've just got to realize it's just a feeling. There's realness behind that feeling, and I understand what you're going through. Like and I still encounter fear all the time. And it's like, you've got to understand though, the sun's still going to come up, Lord willing, like the sun is still going to rise. One of my business mentors told me that. One of my clients told me that, he said anytime he's just having a freak out panic about something, it's like, the sun's going to come up tomorrow regardless. So like, you'll figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Understand that a lot of the times it is a build the plane as you fly it kind of situation. Realize that it's a feeling, realize that you can move past it. You're going to have to just put the blinders on and just go. A lot of times, I when it came to buying the FX6, like when it came to several gear purchases, I had to get to the point where I just like click, like I just had to like get it done, bro. Cause like I will ruminate on things. I have such bad anxiety. I have such bad imposter syndrome. Like I will stew on that bull crap forever. And you just got to go for it, man. Like if you've saved your money, if you've made good connections, if you have people that are interested in working with you, jump off the cliff, bro. Like, and this isn't legal advice. Don't sue me if you go broke and, go bankrupt and all that. This is just cute advice. I've told this story a few times around friends and whoever else, but I was working a show one time and I forget where it was. I forget who it was for, but I was working a show. And the speaker, there's all kinds of motivational videos at these shows. And the speaker played a video, and it was Will Smith on Ellen, I believe, talking about jumping out of a airplane to skydive. And he was just talking about how scared he was and how, it was just, he built it up. He said, I didn't get a good night's sleep. I literally let it ruin the entire day before skydiving because I was so sick to my stomach about skydiving. And then he talked about how once he jumped out the plane, it was bliss. It was, seeing the earth from that high up, the adrenaline, everything else, and just the sense of accomplishment and just human spirit type stuff, like he said it just made it all worth it and it made him feel stupid because it's like, why did I worry? And he said a quote that really stuck out to me that said, fear, I believe that, I don't quote me word for word, but roughly it was, fear is a mile high and a mile long, but it's paper thin. And like once you poke through it and just realize that it just looks big and scary, but everything in reality, like fear is not reality, bro. Like it's an emotion. It's like a passing feeling, and feelings like are our reality, I guess. But it's one of those things like if you let fear take over, you're going to freeze. You're never going to do anything. And realizing that it's just a passing emotion, feeling it for a second and kind of swallowing and being like, all right, let's go. Anyway, we got to do it scared. Like understand that we're all scared. Like you can do it scared and that's fine. I'm not saying you have to eliminate fear. Like you're going to experience fear. I still experience fear all the time in multiple areas, not just freelance, going pee in the middle of the night and it's pitch black in my house, a little scary, So like, it's one of those things like you're going to deal with every, season in your life. And I just think that it's one of those things where you've got to do it scared. So hopefully you got something out of this. I'm sorry that I rambled so much, but that's kind of how I am. Like this is all, little teaching points mixed with real experience. So that might be what the podcast ends up becoming, the Eli effect. Like I want you to walk away with something from this and I want you to change your life. I want you to change the world, So like hopefully this kind of made sense. Hopefully you want to see more of this and please give me feedback. Like for real, I thrive on feedback and I'm not saying you need to glaze me. I'm not saying I need like, oh Christian, this was so good. Like I want to just hear what you want to hear. And I want to hear what you thought was good, what was bad, just honest critique. I know at the end of the day, it's my channel and, people tell me all the time, it's like, dude, if you want to do it, just do it. And it's like, I like that, but I don't at the same time. I like to know that you guys are interested because I'm doing this for you. Like I'm doing this for me and you, but symbiotic, that's the word from earlier in the podcast about the relationship that mutually works together. Symbiotic. We got it, boys. I'll see you in episode 2. Let me know what you want to hear about. I'll be cooking it up in the meantime. Peace.